Welcome back to the continuing adventures of the monad. In continuing to lay the foundation to examine the various aspects of Gnosticism, we look at two major characters that feature centrally in all Gnostic literature. They are Jeshu and Christ-Maitreya. Central to the whole Christian story is the life of Jesus. What do we actually know about this life if we look at the historical evidence? The reality is that we know absolutely nothing. In recent times, scholars have started to point out the blindingly obvious fact that there is no historical footprint of a man that the Christians faithfully are convinced existed. What we are dealing with is not reality but a legend. Until someone who has causal consciousness is given the job by the hierarchy to lay down the fact of exactly what happened in Palestine during this time period, we are going to remain in the dark. Here is a rub. According to Lawrency, we are not entitled to know anything about the lives of any member of the hierarchy. What they get up to is their own business, not ours. These highly evolved beings have no interest in promoting themselves. They are here to do a job. It is the job that matters, not them. Give humanity a piece of information, and they invariably anthropomorphize it, turn that human character into a god, and promptly worship it. This is why the true biographies of these great adepts are not revealed. A good example is the life of Buddha. Do you really think he was born a prince, had a wife and son, and then abandoned them? Not in a month of Sundays. Think about the karma involved there. If you take that story and place it into our triadic model, then you begin to see the wife as the matter aspect, found in the first triad. The son becomes the consciousness aspect found in the second triad, and the Buddha himself is the motion energy aspect, the father. Now the allegory comes alive, and its esoteric meaning is understood. Bearing these things in mind, let us look at what esoteric knowledge tells us about the life of Jeshu. You will see similarities to the narrative portrayed in the Gospel, but there are significant differences, not least when these events were actually supposed to have occurred. So, the Jesus of the Bible was really called Jeshu and was born in Judea to Israelite parents in the year 105 BCE. This puts the start of the story even further from when the Gospels were supposed to have been written. If Paul's letters were written in the 1st century CE, and references are made to Jesus' family as though they are still living, there is no way this could be the case. As it is, most of Paul's letters are forgeries. That is not me speaking. This is the common consensus amongst biblical scholars today. Jeshu's parents were wealthy. No humble carpenter here with an unmarried teenager in tow. Jeshu was born into the highest social class in his community. His mother and father were indeed called Mary and Joseph, and they were both Gnostics. Mary accepted the role of being the mother of an avatar. You could say, well, of course she would. Who would not want to be part of such a great drama? But think of it another way. You give birth to an avatar, and as a result, you are not going to exactly have a normal parent-child relationship. Mary and Joseph left Jeshu to develop in whatever manner he saw fit. If he did not want to eat his vegetables, there was going to be no argument about it. At the age of 12, Jeshu decided to enroll himself into a knowledge order known as the Essenes. They were a secret society that had their base in the southern Judean desert. Now, we know about this location as this is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. The public face of this order was a school for the prophets of Israel. How quite you take lessons in becoming a prophet, I do not know. The order was founded about 150 BCE by a Jew who had been initiated into the ancient Chaldean Kabbalistic tradition. His objective was to establish, in what was a relatively young Jewish nation, an esoteric doctrine of its own. He compiled a doctrine using snippets from ancient Jewish text, mixed with a good dose of imagination to account for the missing facts, and baked it in the desert for a few years. Out of the oven popped the Jewish Kabbalah, which has undergone several revisions since then. Here is an interesting tidbit. Blavatsky, in Isis Unveiled, said that the Gnostics were but the followers of the old Essenes under a new name. Lawrence says this is nonsense, as the Essenes were not founded by a member of the planetary hierarchy. This is the basic prerequisite for a genuine esoteric knowledge order. Lawrence also tells us that members of the Black Lodge have also founded many such orders. Alas, from the very beginning, this society had the wrong aim and direction. Firstly, it was made exclusively Jewish. This hardly chimes with the concept of unity. What were the core drivers for the formation of such an exclusive sect? They were religious fanaticism and national chauvinism. Lawrence tells us that any exoteric interpretation of its symbols was regarded as being sacrilegious and punishable by death. It was the Essenes that sentenced Jeshu to death. Needless to say, the prevailing spirit within the Essene order ran completely counter to the life principles that would have animated Jeshu. He had taken the I3 and was therefore a perfected human being. Now, according to Lawrence, Jeshu was a rare individual. Even within the ranks of enlightened persons, he was apparently free of all negative traits, devoid of ego, and not likely to be tempted by anything except possibly chocolate. But, as that was only found in the Americas, his resolve was never put to the test. Not all initiates are full of sweetness and light. Each has an individual character, which, after causalization, forms a template upon which all subsequent incarnations will proceed. This can make life experiences lighter or darker. This may seem unfair. You arrive in the fourth kingdom with baggage. However, destiny sorts out these kinks in one's character as one evolves. That is what makes life so exciting and unpredictable. It should be noted that Jeshu was fully aware that he was to become the instrument of the monadic 43 self Christ-Maitreya. It was his task to lend the Bodhisattva, in brackets world teacher, his body at the appropriate time. Because Jeshu was not attracted to any facet of the first triad, he was looked upon with suspicion by his fellow Essenes. According to esoteric law, at 19, Jeshu travelled to an Essene monastery at Mount Serbal. There he availed himself of its voluminous library. When he subsequently left this order, it was because he realized that the order had become irredeemably petrified by dogmatism. There was not a cat in hell's chance of infusing any new ideas into the sect. He spent 7 years in this order, and during this time he was regarded with suspicion by the other monks because his general demeanor made a mockery of all their self-deceptive hypocrisy. So, there was no option but to leave the order, which he did after a visit to Mount Serbal. He traveled to Egypt and enrolled in an esoteric temple, and there he took the I4, acquiring essential/unity consciousness. 46. He then went walkabout, traveling to India and Tibet, where he stayed in a monastery until the appointed time for him to return to Palestine. This occurred in 76 BCE. He was now 29 years old. Once back home, Jeshu gathered around him a group of disciples belonging to various esoteric societies, such as the Gnostics, Kabbalists, and Hermetists. These were no illiterate fishermen. He became their teacher and initiated them further into the esoteric mysteries. The story of the fishermen came from the fact that this group called themselves fishermen since the new epoch they were entering was Pisces, and the symbology of this sign is that of a fish. Lawrence tells us that the lives of this band of brothers were rational, purposeful, and in alignment with the laws that govern the refinement of one's envelope and mind. Consequently, they were vegetarian and strictly excluded alcohol from their diet. So much for the wine served up at the Last Supper. The true story of the life of Jeshu has not been allowed to be published. We would have to first reach a stage in our consciousness to appreciate and understand the events occurring in such a life. The story that did get published about this life was, needless to say, completely distorted, and the rest is history. Just to complete the story of Jeshu, he reincarnated about 70 years after he was stoned to death. Yes, he was stoned, not crucified. His new persona was that of Apollonius of Tyana. If you read up about this amazing person, you immediately are struck by the similarity between this person and the life of the historical Jesus. In this last incarnation, Jeshu took the I-5 and became a master. Lawrence classifies this level as super-essential. Bladden calls it lower spiritual. Let's just call it a 45 self. So much simpler. Today, this monad has taken the I-6 and become a 44 self and the Chohan, or Lord of the Sixth Ray. That really is a meteoric rise up the ranks. It is time to close the discussion. The presentation of Christ-Maitreya's life will have to wait until next time. Thank you.